I never imagined my own sister-in-law would turn against me. Yet there I stood, frozen behind the heavy oak door of the Bennett family kitchen in our sprawling estate just outside Boston. The clink of wine glasses and the low hum of voices stopped me cold. Sarah's voice, sharp and bitter, cut through the air. Emily's been trying for 3 years. Nothing. No kids, no heir. The Bennett legacy needs someone who can deliver, Margaret. You know what I mean. My name is Emily. My heart pounded as I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. I'd always thought my struggle to conceive was my private pain, a quiet battle fought in doctors' offices across Cambridge. Now it was a weapon. Margaret, my mother-in-law, responded with a voice like ice. The trust is clear. The Bennett empire demands a bloodline. Emily's failure threatens everything. Sarah, you understand, don't you? Sarah hesitated, her voice softer, almost guilty. She's my sister-in-law, Margaret. And Michael loves her. Margaret scoffed. Love doesn't secure a dynasty. My son will see reason. We need a fertile heir to carry the Bennett name forward. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. The familiar scent of rosemary and roasted lamb from the dining room, usually so comforting, now churned my stomach. Our weekly family dinner felt like a trap. Emily, come in. Margaret's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. I flinched, my pulse racing. The lamb's getting cold. I smoothed my dress, forcing a smile as I pushed through the door. Sorry, I was just checking my phone. The lie felt heavy on my tongue. Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes, her fingers twisting the edge of her napkin, a nervous tic I'd known since we were kids. Margaret, though, beamed with practiced grace, spooning mashed potatoes onto her plate as if she hadn't just plotted my ruin. I slid into my seat, the mahogany table stretching endlessly between us. The chandelier above cast harsh light on Sarah's pale face. Where's Michael? I asked, noticing my husband's empty chair. Still at the office? Margaret waved a dismissive hand. You know how demanding his role is. The Bennett real estate empire doesn't run itself. Her words landed like a slap. That empire, it seemed, was ready to erase me. I set my fork down, the clink loud in the tense silence. Actually, I have some news. Sarah's head snapped up and Margaret's smile tightened, her eyes narrowing. I swallowed hard, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Michael and we're exploring a new fertility treatment. The doctor says it's promising. Sarah's gaze darted to Margaret, who dabbed her lips with a napkin, unruffled. Expensive, I presume, Margaret said coolly. And often futile. Perhaps it's time to face reality, Emily. Her words stung, raw and cruel. I'd heard whispers of judgment before, but never so blunt, never from family. The room spun slightly, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her napkin now a crumpled mess. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the hardwood floor echoing like a warning. I need some air, I said, my voice tight. As I walked out, Margaret's voice followed me, calm and cutting. Let her go, Sarah. She'll learn soon enough. The dining room in the Bennett estate felt like a battlefield. My chair scraped against the polished hardwood as I forced myself to stay calm, the sting of Margaret's words still burning. Sarah's eyes flickered with guilt, her napkin twisted into knots. I took a deep breath, my hands steady despite the chaos in my chest. Michael and I have news, I said, my voice clear, cutting through the heavy silence. We've found a new fertility treatment. The doctor in Cambridge says it could work. Margaret's smile froze, her fork pausing midair. Expensive treatments, she said, her tone sharp as a blade, often lead to disappointment. Some women, Emily, simply aren't meant to be mothers. The words hit like a slap, raw and deliberate. Sarah gasped, her eyes wide. Margaret, that's harsh. But Margaret just dabbed her lips with her napkin, unruffled, her gaze locked on me like a predator sizing up prey. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. I'd faced cruel whispers before, but this was different family, my own mother-in-law, dismissing me so openly. The chandelier's light glinted off the silverware, making the room feel colder. I believe in science, I said, forcing a smile. And Michael supports me. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her silence louder than words. She knew more than she was letting on. Just then, the front door clicked open. Michael stepped in, his tie loosened, his face tired from a long day at the Bennett Group's downtown Boston office. "What's going on?" he asked, sensing the tension. His eyes found mine, searching for answers. I stood, my chair screeching again. "Your mother thinks I'm unfit for this family," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Because I can't give you a child." Michael's face darkened as he looked at Margaret. "Is this true?" Margaret sighed, her composure unshaken. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. I'm being practical. The Bennett legacy needs an heir. You understand, Michael?" He shook his head, stepping closer to me, his hand finding my waist. "Emily is my family. This stops now." His voice was low, dangerous, but Margaret just raised an eyebrow unfazed. The air felt suffocating. I couldn't stay in that room, not with Margaret's smugness and Sarah's betrayal hanging like smoke. "I need to go," I muttered, grabbing my purse from the counter. "Emily, wait," Sarah called, her voice shaky, but I was already halfway to the door. Margaret's parting words followed me, cold and calculated. "She'll come around, Sarah. Reality always wins." Outside, the crisp Boston evening air hit my face, grounding me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed a number I'd hoped never to need. "Carter Law Offices," a calm voice answered. "Daniel, it's Emily Bennett," I said, my voice steady now. "You once told me to call if I needed financial advice. I need more than that. I need a plan." Daniel's tone sharpened. "Name the time, Emily." I glanced back at the glowing windows of the estate, shadows moving behind the curtains. "Tomorrow morning. First thing." As I hung up, a fire sparked inside me. Margaret thought she could erase me, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. This wasn't just about the Bennett fortune anymore. It was about respect, loyalty, and proving I belonged. I slid into my car, the engine humming to life. The road to Boston stretched ahead, and with it, my resolve. Margaret wanted a fight. She was about to get one. The morning sun glinted off the glass buildings of Beacon Street as I stepped into Daniel Carter's law office in downtown Boston. My heart raced, but my resolve was ironclad. Last night's betrayal still burned Margaret's cold dismissal, Sarah's guilty silence. I wasn't just fighting for my place in the Bennett family anymore. I was fighting for my future. Daniel greeted me with a firm handshake, his sharp eyes scanning my face. "You look like you're ready for war, Emily." I managed a tight smile. "I am." We sat at a polished mahogany table, papers spread out like battle plans. "So, Margaret's scheming to cut you out of the Bennett Trust," Daniel said, leaning forward. "She's clever, but your father-in-law was cleverer. Look at this." He slid a document toward me, pointing to a clause buried in legal jargon. "This protects the spouse's rights, kids or no kids. Margaret can't touch your share without your signature." Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. "She'll find a way," I said, gripping my coffee mug. "She always does." Daniel nodded, pulling out another file. "She's already trying. My sources say she's digging for loopholes, something about bloodline heirs. She's meeting estate lawyers across Boston." My stomach twisted. Margaret wasn't just plotting, she was relentless. "Then we need to be smarter," I said, my voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Daniel's eyes gleamed. "I've got a few ideas. A separate trust, independent of the Bennett estate. It's legal, ironclad, and puts you in control." As we strategized, my phone buzzed. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Emily, where are you?" His voice was tight, worried. "Mom's been calling all morning, saying she wants to apologize." I glanced at Daniel, who was sketching a financial diagram. "I'm handling something, Michael. I'll be home later." I hung up before he could press further, turning back to Daniel. "What's next?" He slid a form across the table. "We start building your trust. You'll need to sign here." A wave of nausea hit me, sudden and sharp. I gripped the table, breathing deeply. "You okay?" Daniel asked, concern flickering in his eyes. "Just stress," I muttered, but a thought nagged at me. I'd been feeling off for weeks, tired, queasy. With everything else, I'd ignored it. I need to step out, I said, gathering my things. When can we finalize this? Daniel stood. 2 days. But Emily, be careful. Family feuds over money get ugly fast. An hour later, I sat in my car outside a pharmacy in Cambridge, staring at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines stared back, clear as day. My hands shook as I dialed my doctor's office in Brookline. I need an appointment. Now. By noon, the doctor confirmed I was 8 weeks pregnant. After 3 years of failed treatments, the irony was almost cruel. Just when Margaret declared me worthless, I held the one thing she craved most, a Bennett heir. My phone rang again. Sarah's name lit up the screen. I braced myself and answered. Emily, I'm so sorry, she blurted. I should have warned you about Margaret. She's obsessed with the trust, talking about legitimate heirs to her lawyer. My hand instinctively touched my stomach. Is she at the estate now? I asked. Sarah hesitated. No, but she's meeting her lawyer tomorrow. I was supposed to keep quiet, but I can't do this to you. Her voice broke, guilt pouring through. Tell me everything she's planning, I said, my tone sharp. Every detail. Sarah swallowed hard. She's pushing for DNA tests on any future kids, saying it's to protect the bloodline. She's desperate. A plan sparked in my mind, cold and clear. Keep her close, Sarah. Don't let her suspect you're talking to me. I hung up, staring at the pharmacy bag. This baby was my trump card, but for now, it stayed my secret. Margaret thought she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. The upscale restaurant in Back Bay buzzed with clinking glasses and soft jazz, but the air at my table felt like a storm brewing. Margaret sat across from me, her designer handbag resting like a trophy beside her. She'd invited me to lunch, claiming it was to clear the air after the disastrous family dinner. I knew better. My secret, the 8-week-old life growing inside me, gave me strength, but I kept my face neutral, sipping water to steady my nerves. You've barely touched your salad, Emily, Margaret said, her smile tight. Still upset about our little chat? I stabbed a cucumber, forcing my voice to stay even. Just not hungry. My stomach churned, and not just from morning sickness. Margaret leaned forward, sliding a sleek envelope across the table. I've been thinking about your future, she said, her tone syrupy. This is a draft agreement. Generous, I think. It ensures you're comfortable if you and Michael part ways. My fork clinked against the plate, loud in the hushed restaurant. You're trying to buy me out of my marriage? Margaret's eyes narrowed, but her smile didn't waver. I'm being practical, Emily. You're young. You could start fresh, find someone better suited. Rage surged through me, hot and sharp. I opened my mouth to fire back, but a familiar voice cut through the tension. Margaret, Emily, what a coincidence. Claire, my sister-in-law, stood by our table, her warm smile a stark contrast to Margaret's icy demeanor. I'd never been so relieved to see her. We're having a private discussion, Margaret snapped, her composure slipping. Claire raised an eyebrow unfazed. Looked like more than that. I seized the moment, grabbing my purse. Claire, walk me out. Margaret's glare followed us, but I didn't care. Outside, the crisp Boston air cleared my head. Claire took my arm, her voice low. What's going on? You looked ready to throw wine in her face. I laughed bitterly. She's orchestrating my divorce, complete with a payout. She's gone too far. Claire's jaw tightened. You know she's been meeting with a divorce attorney, right? I overheard her on the phone yesterday at the estate. My heart sank, but I pressed for details. Did she mention anything specific? Claire nodded. Something about requiring DNA tests for any future heirs, tying it to the trust conditions. She's serious, Emily. My hand instinctively brushed my stomach, then dropped. Margaret was building a cage, and I was her target. I stepped away, pulling out my phone to call Sarah. What's Margaret done now? I demanded the moment she answered. Sarah's voice trembled. She showed me a divorce agreement for you. It's insane. And she asked me to meet her lawyer next week, to sign as a potential beneficiary if you're out. My grip tightened on the phone. And you're considering it? Sarah hesitated. No, but she's so convincing, Emily. I'm sorry. Her guilt was real, but it wasn't enough. You thought she was reasonable before, I said, my tone sharp. Still think that? No, Sarah whispered. I'm done with her games. I softened, but only slightly. Prove it. Keep me posted on every move she makes. I hung up, my mind racing. Margaret was tightening her net, but she didn't know I held the one thing she'd never expect. I drove to Daniel's office, the city blurring past. He needed to know about this latest move. As I pulled into the parking lot, my phone buzzed a text from Claire. Margaret's calling an emergency family dinner tonight. Be ready. I stared at the message, a plan forming. Let Margaret think she's in control. Tonight, I'd start turning the tables. The dining room of the Bennett estate in suburban Boston glowed under the chandelier's light, but the air crackled with tension. I sat at the mahogany table, my hand resting lightly on my still flat stomach, the secret of my 8-week pregnancy fueling my resolve. Margaret stood at the head, her smile sharp as a blade, radiating confidence. Sarah fidgeted across from me, her eyes darting nervously. Claire sat beside her husband, her gaze steady, a silent ally. Michael, my husband, squeezed my hand under the table, his face tight with worry. Tonight, Margaret had called an emergency family dinner. I was ready. Margaret raised her wine glass, her voice smooth. I have an announcement. She passed out crisp documents, each page a weapon. This is a proposed amendment to the Bennett Family Trust. It clarifies beneficiary requirements, specifically DNA testing for future heirs. Sarah's hands shook as she skimmed the paper, whispering, "This is ruthless." Claire's jaw clenched, her eyes flashing with disbelief. I stayed calm, my pulse steady. Margaret thought she held all the cards. She was wrong. Before you continue, I said, my voice cutting through the room, I have something to say. Margaret's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. This isn't the time, Emily. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood. It's the perfect time. I pulled a folder from my purse, the evidence Daniel had compiled. Here's a record of your meetings with estate lawyers across Boston, Margaret. Notes on your plan to cut me out of the trust. Oh, and let's not forget the private investigator you hired to tail me. Michael snatched the papers, his face darkening as he read. Mom, is this true? Margaret slammed her hand on the table, her composure cracking. I'm protecting our legacy. Emily's failure to produce an heir threatens everything. Sarah stood, her voice trembling but firm. No, you're tearing this family apart. I'm done helping you hurt my sister-in-law. Margaret's face twisted. Sit down, Sarah. You agreed to be a beneficiary. No, I didn't, Sarah shot back, stepping beside me. And I never will. The room fell silent, the weight of her defiance hanging heavy. Margaret clutched her envelope, her knuckles white. You'll regret this. I smiled, calm and cold. I don't think so. See, I have evidence of everything. Your surveillance, your bribes to Sarah, even the divorce agreement you tried to shove down my throat at lunch. Michael's voice was low, dangerous. You offered my wife a divorce settlement? Margaret's silence was deafening. Claire leaned forward, her tone sharp. You've gone too far, Mom. Just then, the dining room door swung open. Daniel Carter stepped in, briefcase in hand. Am I interrupting? He asked, his voice steady. Margaret whirled on him. Who let you in? Claire raised a hand. I did. Emily asked me to ensure Daniel could join us. Daniel set his briefcase on the table, pulling out a thick stack of papers. I have documents clarifying the original trust conditions and Margaret's attempts to twist them. More importantly, he said, sliding another file forward, this is Emily's independent trust, fully funded and approved. It protects her assets, completely separate from the Bennett estate. Margaret stammered, you can't do that. I met her gaze across the table. I already have. A wave of dizziness hit me, sudden and sharp. I gripped the table, breathing deeply. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Emily, you okay? I nodded, but the room spun slightly. Michael knelt beside me, concern replacing his anger. Do you need a doctor? I straightened, my voice firm. No. But there's something you all need to know, something that makes Margaret's schemes pointless. I placed a hand on my stomach, the gesture deliberate. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. The room went still, the air sucked out in a collective gasp. Michael's eyes widened, a mix of shock and joy. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Claire grinned, her eyes sparkling. Margaret, though, looked like she'd been struck by lightning. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're lying." I smiled, stronger with every second. "Oh, I'm not. I found out the day after I overheard your little kitchen plot. Funny how timing works." Margaret's shock twisted into rage. "You manipulated us all." Sarah laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's rich, coming from you." Daniel cleared his throat. "Legally, this pregnancy voids Margaret's recent moves. The trust protects Emily and her child." Michael stood, his chair tipping back. "Enough, Mom. You're done." Margaret grabbed her papers, trembling. "This isn't over." I called after her, my voice steady. "It is. And Margaret? Your investigator works for me now." As she stormed out, the tension broke. Michael pulled me into his arms, whispering, "A baby. We're having a baby." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "I'm going to be an aunt." Claire laughed, breaking the silence. "And I'll be the cool aunt." The room filled with warmth, the weight of Margaret's schemes lifting. My hand rested on my stomach, our future secure. The game was over and I'd won. The boardroom in the Bennett Group's downtown Boston office felt like a fortress, its sleek glass table reflecting the stern faces of the family council. I sat between Michael and Daniel Carter, my hand resting on my slightly rounded belly, now 12 weeks along. Across from us, Margaret sat rigid, her water glass gripped tightly, betraying her calm facade. The chairman, a gray-haired man with a voice like gravel, leaned forward. "Emily, you're alleging Margaret manipulated the family trust illegally." "That's a serious claim." Daniel slid a thick folder across the table. "Not an allegation. Evidence." The chairman's eyebrows rose as he flipped through pages records of Margaret's meetings with lawyers, her private investigators' reports, even her attempt to bribe Sarah. "This is troubling," he said, his tone icy. Margaret's voice cut in, sharp and defensive. "It's all lies. Emily's twisting the truth, conveniently pregnant to secure her place." Michael's hand tightened on mine, his voice low and fierce. "You know what we endured with infertility, Mom. The pain, the endless treatments. And you used it against us." I spoke softly, but every word carried weight. "My medical records are in that folder, along with proof Margaret exploited our struggle." The board members' past documents, their expressions darkening. A woman in a sharp blazer asked, "The new trust you set up, Emily, it's separate from the Bennett estate?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. It protects Emily and her child from this hostile environment." Margaret laughed bitterly. "Hostile? I was safeguarding our legacy." I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Margaret's voice filled the room, instructing her investigator to track my every move, my doctor's visits. Her face paled. The chairman's gaze hardened. "You had your daughter-in-law followed?" Claire, seated in the back, stood. She also tried to turn Sarah against Emily, promising her a cut of the trust. Sarah nodded, her voice steady. "I'll testify." Margaret offered me money to betray my sister-in-law. The chairman raised a hand. "Enough. This board protects the family's integrity, not just its assets." "Margaret, effective immediately, you're removed from all trust and company authority. Your personal stake remains, but you have no voting power." Margaret shot up, trembling. "You can't do this." I stood too, my voice calm. "I'm carrying the next Bennett, who'll never be judged by their ability to produce heirs." The chairman added, "We fully support Emily's independent trust. It's a prudent move." Margaret turned to Michael, desperate. "Sweetheart, I did this for you." He rose, his voice final. "No, Mom. You did this for control. Security will escort you out." As guards led her away, Margaret glanced back. "You'll regret this." I called after her, "My only regret is not seeing you clearly sooner." The room erupted in chatter. Board members congratulated us on the baby, pledging support. Sarah hugged me, whispering apologies. Claire chatted with Daniel, finalizing legal details. Outside, the Boston sunlight felt warm, cleansing. Michael wrapped an arm around me. "You okay?" I smiled, touching my belly. "Better than okay. We can finally enjoy this pregnancy. The chairman approached, smiling. The board's setting up an educational trust for your child, separate from the estate. A fresh start. Sarah caught up, her eyes earnest. Emily, I want to be part of your baby's life. I'll make this right. I met her gaze, seeing genuine regret. One step at a time. Weeks later, in our Newton home, the nursery was coming together. Claire burst in, waving her phone. Margaret's selling her house. She's leaving Massachusetts. Michael, painting the ceiling, paused. She didn't tell us. I sat in a rocking chair, processing. Relieved, mostly, I said. A letter from Margaret's lawyer arrived that day, brief and unapologetic. Emily, you won. I underestimated you. Take care of my grandchild. Michael read it, jaw tight. At least she acknowledged the baby. As Claire and Sarah bickered over nursery themes, forest versus stars, I looked at Michael. Our hands joined over my belly. The baby kicked, a tiny promise of a future free from manipulation. We'd broken the cycle, building a family bound by love, not legacy. That was the true victory.